Ryan Gass here, PTPGun.com, Firearms Training, and today we're going to go over Maryland firearm laws. Now, in any firearms training videos where you're talking about law, there is going to be the common disclaimer. State firearms laws are subject to frequent change. This summary is not to be considered legal advice, nor a restatement of the law. To determine applicability of these laws to specific situations which you may encounter, you are strongly urged to consult a Maryland-based attorney. The purpose of this video training is to educate the community on the recent changes that restrict your Second Amendment rights, as well as to help you meet the training requirements for the Maryland HQL, Handgun Qualification License, which is needed in Maryland in order just to buy a handgun, but also the Maryland Handgun Permit, which allows the holder to conceal carry. Main topics to be covered today include, but not limited to, where to find and read applicable laws, disqualifying factors, restrictions on carry, transportation of a firearm, Maryland case law and self-defense, interacting with law enforcement, as well as how to find legal counsel. Now, discussing the Maryland Handgun Permit itself, the training certification for that permit is valid for 2 years. The application fee for the Maryland Handgun Permit as of October 1, 2023 is $125. That fee does not cover the fingerprints, the photograph, nor the training itself. Now, when you get your Maryland Handgun Permit, it is valid for no less than 2 years, expiring the last day of your birth month. When you go to reapply for your Maryland Handgun Permit before it expires, you'll have to have 1 day of training instead of 2, no new live scan fingerprints, and the renewal fee is $75 rather than the initial fee, which was $125. Your renewal permit for your Maryland Handgun Permit will then be valid for no less than 3 years, expiring the last day of your birth month. Reciprocity is when 2 or more states have a reciprocal agreement between each other, accepting each other's ability to conceal carry based on licensing or permits. Recognition is when a state recognizes the other state's permit, whether they recognize theirs or not. For example, in Virginia recognizes by law, they recognize any and all permits you could possibly get in the United States. When carrying in a state that recognizes your permit, you are going to follow that state's laws. Such as, if I have my Maryland Handgun Permit and I'm going to carry in Virginia concealed with that, which is legally acceptable, I'm going to follow Virginia laws, not Maryland. Much like a driver's license. If a state says you cannot have a radar detector, but your home state does, you have to follow that state's laws when you're in that state. Again, let's say Maryland. Maryland, you can have a radar detector. Virginia, you cannot. If you are driving or operating a vehicle in Virginia with your Maryland driver's license, you will not have a radar detector because you will be in violation of Virginia law, regardless of what Maryland allows. Now, does Maryland recognize or have reciprocal agreements with any other states? No. But is the Maryland permit recognized in other states? Yes. So here we're looking at a map that shows you where in the United States your Maryland Handgun Permit is valid in. This map was taken from an app that I have on my Android, but you can also get the same app on your iPhone. It's called CCW 50 State Concealed Carry. It's $1.99 for the first year and 99 cents every year after that. But it's a pretty useful app that shows you where your different permits can be recognized at, and also tells you the different laws of states in which you might travel in while carrying. The states that recognize the Maryland Handgun Permit include Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Michigan, Mississippi, Montana, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, West Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. Now, when it comes to licensing and firearms in Maryland, let's go and break that down a little bit. When it comes to long guns, do you need any type of permit in order to purchase them? No, not at all. And also, you can open carry a long gun without any type of permit or training, and there's no legal availability in order to conceal carry a long gun in Maryland. Now, with handguns, do you need a license in order to buy a handgun? Yes, and that is the Maryland Handgun Qualification License. When it comes to carrying a handgun, you need a Maryland handgun permit in order to conceal carry, and after October 1st, open carry of a handgun is illegal. For the purposes of this section, the requirement to keep the handgun concealed is not violated by the momentary or inadvertent exposure of the handgun, or the momentary or inadvertent exposure of the imprint or the outline of the handgun. While open carry is illegal, you don't need to be overly worried about making a mistake and, again, somebody noticing it or becoming exposed for a quick moment. But you need to make a conscious effort to try to keep it concealed at all times. Now, the Maryland Handgun Qualification License, for the rest of the video referred to as HQL, the training is valid for 3 years. The application fee for the Maryland HQL is $75 as of October 1, 2023, and the HQL will be valid for 10 years. The renewal for your Maryland HQL is $75 and does not require training nor fingerprints. The fact that you have to have an HQL in order to buy a handgun is one of the results of SB 281 from the Maryland legislative session in 2013. It did several things, including but not limited to the HQL requirement, but also limited magazine capacity down to 10 rounds. But let's take a closer look at what that aspect of the law actually says. Now, Maryland refers to these magazines as high-capacity magazines, even though oftentimes they are just the standard capacity for many of the firearms. But let's take a better look at that law and exactly what it says. A person may not manufacture, sell, offer for sale, purchase, receive, or transfer a detachable magazine that has a capacity for more than 10 rounds of ammunition for a firearm. Now, this section does not apply to 22 caliber rifles with a tubular magazine. Maryland criminal law defines a detachable magazine as an ammunition feeding device that can be readily removed without requiring assembly of the firearm action or the use of a tool, bullet, or cartridge. Now, when you purchase a handgun in Maryland, even though you pass your background check and you have a license to buy a handgun, you still won't be able to immediately take that home with you. You will have to leave the FFL, Federal Firearms Licensee, the technical term for a gun shop. You have to leave that FFL and you'll have to come back and return to that FFL after 7 days in order to pick up your handgun. Now, you can only buy one handgun every 30 days as per Maryland law unless you are a designated firearms collector. Maryland designated firearms collectors are able to buy more than one handgun in a 30-day period and also can transport their firearms for additional reasons, which we'll talk about here shortly. We have a link in the description of this video below to a blog article on our website which will detail exactly how to become a designated firearms collector. Now, there are going to be certain things that would disqualify a person from being able to buy and or possess a firearm in Maryland. Let's go ahead and take a look at those now. It is unlawful for a person to sell or transfer a regulated firearm to a person whom he knows or has reasonable cause to believe is under the age of 21, has been convicted of a disqualifying crime, including a violation classified under common law and received a term of imprisonment more than 2 years, is a fugitive from justice, an habitual drunkard, is addicted to CDS. And how do they determine if you are a habitual drunkard? If you have 3 or more convictions related to alcohol, one of those being in the past year. How do they determine if you're a habitual user of narcotics? If you have 2 more convictions, one of those being in the last 5 years. Also on that note, if you have your medical marijuana card, you are prohibited from being able to keep and bear arms in Maryland as of this date. If you have your medical marijuana card and you would like to be able to have your right back to keep and bear arms, you will have to surrender that card back to the state and wait a period of time and then be able to access your right. We have a blog article on our website that details that process and talks more on that subject. The link for that is in the description of this video below. You are also disqualified from owning or purchasing firearms if you suffer from a mental disorder and have a history of violent behavior against yourself or another, unless the applicant is in possession of a physician's certificate stating that the person is capable of possessing a regulated firearm without undue danger to the person or others. Also, if you've been confined to a facility for more than 30 days for the treatment of a mental disorder, if you are a respondent against whom an ex parte or civil protection order has been entered under, If you are the subject of an unconstitutional red flag gun confiscation order, if you are under the age of 30 and have been adjudicated delinquent by a juvenile court for an act that would have been a disqualifying crime had it been committed by an adult, if at the time of your attempt to purchase you are visibly under the influence of drugs or alcohol, or if you're believed to be the participant of a straw purchase. Now, what is a straw purchase? A straw purchase is when somebody purchases a firearm for somebody else. If somebody, a family member or a friend says, Ryan, can you go take this $600 and go buy that $500 gun? Keep the change. I'll just link up with you maybe next week or the week after and we'll get that from you. If I were to participate in that, that is a straw purchase and that is illegal. It doesn't matter if that person has a clean background. It doesn't matter if you know them all your life. You cannot purchase firearms for other individuals. They must do that themselves. Doesn't matter whatever reason that they are asking you to do that. You cannot do that. Do not do that. Do not attempt to do that. I promise you, with due time, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but you will eventually get caught and they will hammer you hard. Don't do it. Now, as a Maryland handgun permit holder, you are able to conceal carry, but there are still places in which you cannot carry, and that list has grown significantly. As a result of your Maryland legislators passing SB 1 and Governor Wes Moore signing it into law, which goes into effect October 1, 2023, all businesses, all residences essentially are going to become gun-free zones. Now, there are exceptions to that, including if you are the owner or the leasee of said business or residence. You can still carry at your residence or your business. Also, as the owner or the leasee, you can give permission to others to be able to carry at your home or business. Now, if somebody gives you permission to be able to carry at their property directly, you need to get that in writing. Don't just have it verbally, because if it's not in writing, it didn't happen. You can get permission to be able to carry at someone's property, whether directly, me talking to you and saying you can carry at my home or business, or even indirectly, me putting a sign or a decal up at the entrance stating that lawful concealed carry is authorized. You can buy these decals available to put on your home or business at our website, PTPGun.com. Also, we will be sharing a list of businesses which authorize concealed carry on our website on a blog article so you can know where to go and spend your money and what places to avoid. Now, this aspect of this law is being battled in the courts, and I do believe it is unconstitutional, and the courts will agree, and this will eventually go away. But as of today, as of October 1, 2013, you will be subject to that aspect of the law. Now, outside of businesses or residences, there are additional places that you still cannot carry, regardless of if you think you have permission or not. You cannot carry within 1,000 feet of a demonstration, at public and or private schools, on any land that is owned or leased by the local, county, state, or federal government, daycare centers, community rehab centers, sports arenas, gambling facilities, or polling places, bars or restaurants where alcohol is served, or even establishments that just sell alcohol, such as a liquor store, areas for children or vulnerable adults, government or public infrastructure, special purpose areas. A person who willfully violates the subsection is guilty of a misdemeanor and upon conviction is subject to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 1 year or a fine not exceeding $1,000 or both. Also, just a note, you can carry at places of worship. Now, some of those words that we use, some of those phrases that we use, we need to know what those words, what those phrases mean so we can better know where we can and or cannot carry legally. A special purpose area. A special purpose area means a location licensed to sell or dispense alcohol or cannabis for on-site consumption, including a stadium, a museum, a location being used for an organized sporting or athletic activity, a live theater performance, a musical concert or performance, which the members of the audience are required to pay or possess a ticket to be admitted, or an amusement park, a fair or carnival, a racetrack, or a video lottery facility. Government or public infrastructure area means a building or any part of a building owned or leased by the unit of the state or local government, a building of public or private institution of higher education, a location that is currently being used as a polling place in accordance with Title 10 of the election law, or canvassing ballots in accordance with Title 11. an electric plant or an electric storage facility, a gas plant, or a nuclear power plant. Areas for children or vulnerable adults means a preschool or pre-kindergarten facility or the grounds of the facility, a private primary or secondary school or the grounds of the school, a youth camp, or a healthcare facility. Now, Maryland law as it pertains to transportation of a firearm. It is unlawful for any person without a permit to wear or carry a handgun, openly or concealed, on or about their person, or to knowingly transport a handgun in any vehicle traveling on public roadways, highways, waterways, airways, or upon roads or parking lots generally used by the public. This does not apply to any person wearing, carrying, or transporting a handgun within the confines of real estate owned or leased by them, or in which they reside, or within the confines of a business establishment owned or leased by the person. Fun fact on Maryland law, it is actually illegal to carry a handgun on a dredge boat, but you can carry a 10-gauge shotgun. Now, to be clear, that pertains to dredge boats specifically, not boats in general. If you don't know what a dredge boat is, it doesn't pertain to you. Now, transporting a firearm in Maryland. We're talking about transport, not carrying. All right, so you got to separate the two in your mind. You're either carrying the gun or you're transporting it. All right. Now, when you're transporting a firearm, you need to ensure that you're going to or from a legal place of purchase, sale, or repair shop between such person's bona fide residence, such as, let's say you live in Charles County, Maryland, but you're going to your other house that you own in Ocean City. So you're going between those two residences, between your business and your residence. Now, when you're transporting, not carrying, when you're transporting, the firearm needs to be unloaded and as separate from the ammunition as reasonably possible. Such as if you're on a motorcycle, as separate as reasonably possible, if you have saddlebags, would be to have the firearm in one saddlebag, unloaded, as well as the ammunition in this other saddlebag. That's as separate as reasonably possible. Let's say if you didn't have saddlebags, as separate as reasonably possible, but maybe contained in the same book bag. Now, if you're in a car or an SUV, you'd want to have maybe, say, the ammunition in the passenger floorboard and the firearm getting unloaded in the farthest rear end of the vehicle as possible, even if there's no distinct wall separating the driver from the rear compartment. Now, there's no violation of the Maryland transportation law if you're traveling to or from a formal or informal target practice, sports shooting event, hunting, trapping, or dog obedience training class or show, or a registered gun collector who is moving any part or all of his gun collection from place to place for public or private exhibition. Now, when transporting firearms, again, not carrying, transporting. When transporting firearms, you want to make sure they are unloaded and in an enclosed case. Maryland does have their own version of a assault weapons ban, and you can find a full list of all those firearms, which is a long list, on a blog article found on our website, PTPGun.com. Now, there are items that are not banned in Maryland, but they are heavily regulated both by the federal and state government. Those include short-barreled shotguns, short-barreled rifles, suppressors, and fully automatic firearms. There is a very in-depth process in order to be able to access those type of items, which are extremely expensive and, again, highly regulated. You're strongly encouraged to consult your local FFL, your local gun shop, for more information on the process and being able to obtain such items. Now, commercially made firearms do feature serial numbers on them. For decades, they've been doing this, even before it was required starting in 1967. If your firearm has a serial number on it, you do not want to alter or obliterate it in any way, shape, or form, even in the slightest. Whether it comes to painting it, anything of that nature, do not alter that view of that serial number. Make sure it's readable at all points in time. Now, if I punch you in the face, that is assault. If I punch you in your face because of your race, religion, gender, anything of that nature, that is a hate crime on top of that assault charge. If I rob you, that is a crime. If I rob you and I use a firearm in the commission of that robbery, that is an additional crime on top of that. And when found guilty, no less than 5 years sentence can be given, nor probation granted. It is unlawful to store or leave a loaded firearm where a person knew or should have known that an unsupervised person under the age of 16 would gain access to it. No violation of that law is committed if the person is supervised by an individual at least 21 years of age or older, if that person 16 years of age or younger had obtained the firearm as a result of an unlawful entry into the business or the home, or if the child has a certificate of firearm and hunter safety issued under the Natural Resources article. Now, as gun owners, we need to have a healthy balance between having access to our firearms when we need it, but also having them secured from other people who are not authorized to have access to that firearm, whether it be young people in our home or unauthorized intruders in the home as well. Now, there are lots of different options for you out there in the marketplace to be able to secure your firearm. And how you do that is your own personal choice. Now, when it comes to safes, you can have small tabletop ones, you can have large ones in your closet or your garage or your basement. Whenever you have a safe, regardless of the size, you need to ensure that it's bolted down. Because if you have a nice $300-$400 safe that's a tabletop and it keeps your gun real nice and secured, how secured is it really when I break into your house and I take it and I put it in my vehicle? If it's bolted down, it doesn't guarantee they couldn't take it, but it definitely slows them down and or at least deters maybe them from being able to do that and take that firearm so easily out of your home. Now that same thing goes, even if you have a large gun safe, have it bolted down into the floorboards, into the concrete. Make sure that they can't be just ripped out of your home, out of your business. Make sure that somebody can't just put it on a hand cart and truck it right out the front door. Now, when you're buying a safe, you have different ways that you can use to be able to access the interior of that safe. The two main ones would be an electronic or a mechanical device. Now, when it comes to electronics, you can have something like I have here that you can see here, and this is a button where I can have a couple different pin numbers. Mine is actually a 7-digit pin. I can put in my pin, and it allows me to then open my safe. They also have biometrics where you can use your fingerprint. I personally don't trust that. How many of you all have a cell phone that uses your fingerprint or can use your fingerprint to be able to access your phone? And then when you use that, how many times does that fail? How many times do you put your finger on that and it doesn't work the first, second, or even third time? I do not feel comfortable trusting my safety and security to a technology that has to read my fingerprints that I know fails with my expensive phone. Why would I trust that on my gun safe? That's my personal choice. You're more than welcome to buy one yourself, but that's my personal preference. I also am not a big fan of the mechanical dials for being access to a safe, which are a little bit more old school. Something you might have seen like on a locker when you had school growing up. I know myself, you turn it one way to the code, the other way to the second code, and turn it back to the other third code. And oftentimes, I know myself, I screwed that up, and it was very frustrating. It would take me every time almost a minute or so to get into my locker. So I don't want to have that as well, because when I want to get to my firearm, I want to make sure I can get to my firearm in a timely manner, because seconds count. Now, in the unfortunate event that you either have a firearm lost and or stolen, you need to report that to Maryland law enforcement as soon as possible, but I would strongly advise you only do that with an attorney present due to Maryland gun laws. Now, if you are concerned that somebody's going through a rough patch and may be suicidal, I would personally advise that you do not go the route of red flagging them, as it is a huge overreach of the government and it does have long-lasting negative consequences for that person for years to come. Instead, perhaps discuss with them temporary alternatives, such as transferring the firearms to a trusted friend or family member to hold on to them temporarily while the person is getting assistance in their time of need. Now, when interacting with law enforcement, whether in a traffic stop or otherwise, you have no legal requirement to volunteer the information that you are in possession of a firearm. You have no duty to notify that law enforcement officer. Now, if they do ask if you have a firearm, you do not have the legal ability to lie to them. But you do have a legal protection provided by the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution where you do not have to answer any questions. So they do ask, you are not, again, legally required to answer that question, but you cannot lie to them if you do answer. Depending on how they ask the question, depends on how you answer the question. Such as, if law enforcement asks me, sir, do you have any weapons or contraband in the vehicle that I need to be worried about? The answer is consistently no. because I do not have any weapons or contraband in my vehicle that they nor anybody else needs to be worried about. But if they do ask directly, do you have any weapons or contraband in the vehicle? The answer is either no answer or a simple yes, I do. How would you like to proceed? Now, regardless of what they may ask you or even demand of you, it is not a great idea to ever handle a firearm in the presence of law enforcement. That is not required. They may ask you to handle your firearm, but I'm telling you that it is never a great idea to handle your firearm in front of them. What I'm not saying is that they are setting you up, that they're out to get you, that as soon as you grab for that firearm that they're going to shoot you. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you should not handle your firearm because nothing good can ever come about from that. People sometimes make mistakes. People have misperceptions. If I'm pulled over and I'm in my driver's seat and I'm talking to the officer at my driver's side door and they say, "Sir, do you mind if I take possession of that firearm for duration of stop for your safety and for mine?" If they say that to me and I sit there and say, "Oh yeah, that's fine," I go to take out and hand them my firearm, perhaps I don't realize that they have a partner on the passenger side of my vehicle. I didn't notice that they were there. And maybe they can't hear too well what was asked of me by this law enforcement officer. And when they see me go to pull my firearm out to hand it to the officer as was requested, now they think that I'm a threat to that officer as well as themselves. And that is a great way to get shot. Do not handle your firearm. You're not required to. There are smarter ways to go about it. If you want to give law enforcement possession of your firearm, there are better and smarter ways to do it. Now, if law enforcement asks to take possession of my firearm and I want to comply with that, a smarter way to go about that is to have a discussion with them and guide through it. Something along the lines of, "Okay, I don't feel comfortable handling my firearm. I don't think that's the best idea, both for the officer and for me. Officer, do you mind if I step out of the vehicle and you take that firearm off of me?" All right. And a lot of times they will say, "Yeah, that sounds like a good idea." You get out of the vehicle, keep your hands where they can see them, and let them take that firearm off of you. That may not always be the best choice per your opinion, and there's other ways to go about that too. Let's go ahead and look at a traffic stop in which I was involved in February 15th of 2023 involving the Maryland State Police in Charles County, Maryland. So this is a traffic stop that I was involved with in Charles County, Maryland on February 15th, 2023, and the law enforcement agency involved is the Maryland State Police. They are parked off of Route 301 and they are running radar, and they you'll see my vehicle come from the left to the right here in one moment. There I am. And I suspected that they were going to be trying to pull me over, so I immediately pulled over to the side of the road as quickly as I could.
Those are the good ones.
So listen to what they say when it comes to my vehicle and what is on the outside of my vehicle and what they can reasonably believe I'm doing and doing legally. Keyword legally.
So given this type of vehicle, what are we thinking?
Probably a gun in the car.
Yes. Obviously, I would say I would really hope legally, but
that is key right there. They express with their own words that they believe that everything I'm doing is within my legal right. They have no reason to suspect that I'm breaking the law at all. They have no reasonable cause to believe that I am violating any Maryland law. If you'd like to see this whole video in its full entirety, you can watch that on our YouTube channel, PTPGun.com, Firearms Training.
I think it's a Dodge Durango.
They're already alluding to their desire to check my firearm to make sure it's stolen or not. Even though they've already expressed that they don't believe that I'm doing anything unlawful. Key, watch where my hands are. It's key to watch where my hands are.
Hey, how are you? Trooper Schrock, Maryland State Police, ID 7586. Being on being visibly recorded. Thanks, sir. And is this still a current address for you?
Yes.
And just given the vehicle, do you have any guns on you? Okay.
It's on my front appendix carry.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Again, watch my hands.
Okay, yeah, let me see your permit real quick.
I'm being very deliberate and thoughtful about the position of my hands and allowing them to see them at all times.
All right, and just let you know your permit expires on the 28th. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a new
Okay, yeah, okay, just letting you know.
Yes, sir, I appreciate that.
Gotcha. All right. So he does have a gun. It's on his waistband. Everything's valid. Permit holder.
I do put down my back window so the second trooper can see pretty well.
Yeah, I had a strong feeling given the vehicle.
Like, there's probably a gun in there.
Yeah, I was like, I told him, I'm like, this guy's probably carrying.
Gotcha,
Now, do you guys think that they're concerned at all about me and/or me carrying a gun?
yeah, just because I've never run.
Okay, well, obviously, you can have him, like,
Yeah.
yeah, here it is,
Yeah,
bud.
step out.
All right.
All right, sir. So yeah, if you would just step out of your vehicle real quick, I'm just going to run your gun. I mean, given vehicle, it's most likely illegal, but
Now, again, watch as I'm getting my vehicle and how I'm being deliberate about my hands.
Now, how do y'all want to pursue this? It's in the appendix carry holster.
Notice I don't grab near the
What I'd
gun.
like to do, if it's comfortable with you guys, I'd like to take the whole gun and holster off to alleviate the possibility of a negligent discharge. If you're comfortable
I was
with
worried
that,
about the new
let me
guy
know.
taking the gun off me and potentially shooting me in the family
Got
jewels.
these 2 clips. Now you take the whole thing as is.
Now, I wouldn't otherwise
Yep.
encourage anyone to handle their firearm, but these circumstances dictated it.
Yep. I got you. Yep.
Now, notice what they said. They said the upper leadership want them to run the guns.
Okay. Yep.
Now, also notice I put my hands in my pockets. I did that by mistake. I wouldn't advise you ever put your hands in your pockets. But again, note that where they said that their upper leadership want them to run guns to see if they're stolen or not, even if they have no reason to believe that they are stolen.
723, 1243, 1243%.
We can go ahead and fast forward a little bit. Also, side note, when you have your tag run, they cannot tell just by your tag or your driver's license whether you have a gun or not, whether you have a carry permit or not. They have to run you through the Maryland Gun Center.
1041, ladder one.
The Sig Sauer P365.
And they're about to read off my serial number in a moment, and I cover that audio with my own audio so that you all won't know my serial number. Sound like that Donnie boy off of Wild Thornberries. They're making sure to be very thoughtful about what they say because they don't want to say 1032 man with a gun because that could elicit a adverse reaction from other law enforcement officers in the area. Gotta be very thoughtful about your words. H30 is their vehicle number.
I'm out on traffic and the driver of the vehicle has a concealed carry permit. Can I just get a check on the gun? The information's in the card. Is that okay or not really? Yeah.
You left out a lot of things I said to say, but that's all right. They got the job
I'm
done.
so scared of just sounding stupid. Like,
See,
that's
law
what's-
enforcement officers just like us.
Yeah.
proper procedure.
So as you see right there, what they just said is that we know he's going to be good. They just got to do their, they got to dot their I's and cross their T's.
Scanner, usually not.
Yeah. Registration.
So for the next several minutes, they're just waiting for their dispatcher to run my serial number, make sure it's not stolen, and to make sure that my handgun permit's still valid. They're going to be doing that through the Maryland Gun Center. So we're going to fast forward a little bit through this and cut some fat for you all.
A will guess, or it'll be on the meters reading.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to wait till meters goes.
That's a Dodge, right?
It doesn't matter, no. I heard the thing over the radio, so
Yeah, no.
Yeah, he's just, I mean,
Obviously.
he's got to go ahead and store.
it's in the car, yeah. I figured I'd stop by anyways.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
See, troopers are just like us. They're human beings, and they're nosy as hell, just like anybody else. You heard a man with a gun on the radio and said, "Hey, let me go check that out. See what's going on there."
Not gonna lie, I kind of really do like this SIG.
Hey, just let me know. I got you. I have no problem taking out some troopers to go out shooting.
So,
They
how
like
do you
fun,
plan
too.
on giving it back to them?
I'm going to put it in passenger side seat, or even in the back seat would probably be a better idea.
No, passenger seats already. Where they can
Reach over,
Reach
grab
over,
it,
grab
put the
it,
mag
load it.
back in.
So what's really wrong? I mean, it's just,
To the punch.
They never did ask if I had a second gun on me.
Complete age 30. Everything's routine and valid.
Everything's valid, so they can go ahead and move on. That's what they were just waiting for. So it was about, what, a good 5-6 minutes where they were just waiting for word back whether my permit and my gun were good. Very thoughtful of him. To be clear, I only got a warning.
Yeah,
it's a firearm back.
Backwards.
You put that round back in his bag.
Nope, won't fit.
It won't. He got it maxed out. He had one in December. Yeah, it's maxed out. All good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave your gun, bag, and your extra round right here for you, sir. Here's all your information back. And I just gave you a warning for the speed.
Okay.
And right there's information about the state police. If you want to read it, you can. If not, up to you.
Sounds good.
Yes, sir. Any
Thank you,
questions?
guys. Hey, appreciate y'all being professional and stuff and handling that all good and stuff.
Now listen to the response from this
Just to,
trooper
be
when I asked him
clear
this
from my
question.
understanding and whatnot, I did comply with the request to seize that temporarily, but just so I'm clear, did I legally have to do that? Just to be clear.
To
Give you possession of that. I didn't necessarily have to.
I would like to say yes,
Right.
but because like we don't know
Understood.
if it's stolen, you know,
Yeah,
like
I got you.
I want to say I feel like that's like an absolute, but I'm not 100% confident.
cool.
So
Yeah.
sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Hey, well, I appreciate you guys. I really do.
absolutely.
No problem.
Thank you guys.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one.
Y'all too.
Appreciate these troopers. They did a very good job, very professional, and they were willing to admit what they don't know. And not everyone can do that. So definitely commend them there. Now let's go over Maryland case law, which is set by judicial precedent rather than the statute. During this, we'll go over castle doctrine, stand your ground, middle ground, as well as duty to retreat. Now, before we get any farther, I want to go ahead and start by defining, as Maryland does, how does Maryland define deadly force. Deadly force is the amount of force reasonably calculated to cause death or serious bodily injury. Regarding duty to retreat in Maryland, outside of one's home, a person, before using deadly force in self-defense, has the duty to retreat or avoid danger if such means were within his power and consistent with his safety. So yes, you do have a duty to retreat, but the caveats are that it has to be within your power and consistent with your safety. So what do those caveats mean? How does that change our duty to retreat? There's a deadly threat here. That threat can cause me death or serious bodily injury. But I can run this other way, absolutely. But by running this other way, I'm running across 4 lanes of traffic. Is it a smart idea for me to run away from a threat that's posing a threat of death or serious bodily injury? Is it smart for me to run away from that threat and try to escape it by running across 4 lanes with the traffic? If hit by a car, that also could cause me death or serious bodily injury. So why run away from a threat that may cause you death or serious bodily injury just to be able to get hit by a car and die that way, right? Well, what if it is consistent with your safety? What if another situation and it is consistent with your safety, but not within your power? What does that mean? I'm an able-bodied person, but let's say if somebody is a quadriplegic, they are wheelchair bound. Do you think that it's going to be within their power as much as it would be within mine to be able to safely retreat from a danger? Maybe not. Probably not. So again, yes, you do have a duty to retreat in Maryland, but again, only if such means are within your power. Now, how, if at all, do we have a duty to retreat within our home? Let's look at that. A man or woman faced with danger of attack upon his dwelling need not retreat from his home to escape the danger, but instead may stand his ground and, if necessary, to repel the attack, may kill the attacker. So if we have a violent attacker in our home, we are allowed to stand our ground. We are allowed to defend ourselves. And that can include, but it's not limited to, deadly force if necessary. Again, necessary. That doesn't mean that anyone that walks in your home, you can shoot them dead. No, you'd only use deadly force if necessary, if required, if all lesser means have failed or they couldn't be reasonably used in the first place. So to kind of break that down in a little bit more simpler terms, you can defend yourself in your home. And you can, if necessary, if required, if you have to, you could use deadly force. This is basic common sense. Defend yourself. And if you have to, use deadly force as a last resort when all lesser means have failed or they couldn't have been reasonably employed in the first place. It is a justifiable homicide to kill to prevent the commission of a felony by force or surprise. If other methods could prevent its commission, a homicide is not justified. All other methods of preventing the crime must first be exhausted. However, even in one's home, the degree of force used in self-defense must not be excessive. It doesn't matter where you're at, the context that goes across the board, you can never be excessive. You're using a minimum force necessary in order to neutralize the threat. Now, that minimum force could be deadly force, but it cannot be excessive. What do I mean by that? Look, when we're talking about our firearms, we're talking about potentially having to use them, whether it's simply drawing the gun and or obviously actually deploying, actually discharging that firearm. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody in their right mind, no sane person looks forward to the potential of having to draw their gun, let alone discharge their firearm at another human being. Nobody wants to seriously injure or kill another person. But you need to be serious about this. You need to be very mature and thoughtful about this. You're not going to draw your firearm willy-nilly. This is not a tool that you use to win verbal arguments. This is not an ego booster that you use to see who's got the longer ruler. It is a very serious thing to pull your firearm out and draw that firearm. You better be justified in even doing that, let alone talking about actually discharging your firearm. Like I have clearly said, that is the last thing you ever want to do. It is a last resort, which could be your first resort, but it has to be your last nonetheless. What do I mean by that? Not all situations can lesser means be used. Not in all situations is lesser means reasonable. not in all situations can lesser means adequately defend you or others. So it may very well be your first resort, but it has to be your last. All right. Do I carry a firearm every day? Yes. Do I recognize that there's potential that I may one day have to use that to defend myself, my family, or other innocent individuals? Yes. Do I want to do that? No. But am I prepared to do that if I have to? Yes. The Navy SEAL that shot and killed Osama bin Laden. Great person, hero. That was someone that I think we can all agree needed that and had it coming. But let's take a step back and think about it. Do you think that person, that Navy SEAL, do you think they don't think about that every day? Do you think that doesn't negatively affect them? Do you think that that takes away from their appreciation for life? Absolutely. I don't want to ever take someone else's life or even seriously injure them. But if I have to, in order to defend myself, my wife, my kids, or other individuals, other innocent individuals in the community, would I do that? Yes. Will it affect me long term down the road? Absolutely. But I'll sleep easier at night knowing that I did the right thing, knowing that my kids are still alive, that my wife is still alive, that innocent people are still able to enjoy their life. Absolutely. But again, it is nothing that anybody ever wants to do. It's a very serious thing. I know sometimes people joke and they kind of try to water it down stuff. Oh, I'm going to shoot first, ask questions later, which is a dumb statement. I'd rather be judged by 12, carried by 6. True statement, yes. But it is a very serious thing to take another person's life. I have people that I know, whether from their experience in the military or even law enforcement, one person actually from a self-defense shooting, that have taken the life of another person. And this is not something that they enjoy, that they are necessarily even proud of, that they like to boast about. This is something that they have to deal with daily, at night, even waking up, sweating, and agonizing about. That is not a position that I want to ever be in, nor should you. But do not get me wrong. If I'm put in a position where I have to defend myself, my family, my kids, someone else, I'll be able to rest easier knowing that I did the right thing, that innocent lives were preserved. Do not take the responsibility of carrying a firearm lightly. This is not games. This is real life. This is not video games. This is not nothing of that. This is very serious responsibility that you're taking on, and I hope that I'm impressing that upon you. Now, let's say you do defend yourself or your family or someone else, and you end up finding yourself being charged. It happens. People get charged for doing the good thing, the right thing all the time, and they have to defend against that. It's not a matter of who done it. It's a matter of why it was done. So if that happens, your lawyer is going to be able to show in court that this was done out of self-defense. Now, the instructions that are given to the jury are this. If you are claiming self-defense and the reason of why you did whatever you did, all right, this is the instructions that are given to the jury to decide whether you are guilty or you're found innocent. The defendant must be found not guilty if all 3 factors are present. The defendant actually believed that he or she was in immediate or imminent danger of bodily harm. The defendant's belief was reasonable. The defendant used no more force than was reasonably necessary to defend himself or herself in light of the threatened or actual harm. Now, let's say you didn't just defend yourself, you defended others. These are the instructions that are given to the jury in the case that you are claiming self-defense of others. Defense of others is a defense, and the defendant must be found not guilty if all the following 4 factors are present. The defendant actually believed that the person defended was in immediate or imminent danger of bodily harm. The defendant's belief was reasonable. The defendant used no more force than was reasonably necessary to defend the person defended in light of the threatened or actual force. And the defendant's purpose in using the force was to aid the person defended. Now, let's move into defense of property. Now, I want to be clear before I get into this. Defense is very broad. Defense doesn't necessarily mean deadly force inherently. It could include that, but it doesn't necessarily mean deadly force. All right. So defense of property. The defendant used no more force than was reasonably necessary to defend against the victim's interference with property. But let's be clear. A person may not use deadly force to defend property. Can we defend property? Yes. Can we use force to defend property? Yes. But can we use deadly force to defend property? No. Not at all. Not ever. We cannot use deadly force to defend property. But we can defend property, which is, again, very broad. If Bobby over here comes into this house and walks up and steals my laptop and takes it out the front door, am I forced to just watch him and say, have a nice day, I hope you enjoy it more than I did? No. I can stop him. I can use force to stop him from taking my property, from interfering with my property. But that force cannot be deadly force. If somebody's outside, my truck alarm starts going off, I go outside, check on it, somebody's breaking in my truck, trying to steal my truck. Can I use force to defend my truck from that criminal interference? I can, but I cannot use deadly force. Now, you got to be careful when defending property in general, because while it might start off as you just defending property, not using deadly force, it may turn into now they're posing a deadly threat to you, and you have to use deadly force to defend not your vehicle, not your property in general, but deadly force to defend your life. Let's say that somebody's out there again breaking in my truck, and I go out there and I'm like, what are you doing? I rip them out of my truck. I throw them to the ground. I hold them there, and I yell for the neighbors or for my wife or whatnot, hey, call the cops, yada, yada, yada. All right? I'm holding that person down. I'm pinning them to the ground, waiting for law enforcement to get there. They don't want to be there. They don't want to stay and be held accountable for their actions. So they're punching me. They're kicking me. They're trying to buck me off. And with that, can I use more force now to defend them and try to subdue them? Yes, I could punch back. I could kick back. I could throw a knee, things of that nature. But let's say they pull out a knife now. And they start, because their efforts up to that point weren't getting me off of them. So now they take a knife out and they're trying to stab me. Just, not necessarily that they're trying to, not that their intent is to kill me, but they're trying to get me to let go so they can get out of there. Does that knife, them stabbing me, does that now present a deadly threat to me? Is that posing death or serious bodily harm to me? Yes. Could I use deadly force in that situation at that point in time because of the circumstances? Yes. But you got to think about it, seriously. Take a step back. What if I didn't put myself in that situation? Not that you are necessarily a bad person for trying to defend your property, but imagine if I didn't insert myself into that situation. All right, let's say I let my Ring camera, I let my security cameras, maybe I get a video or picture of the suspect with my phone. I call law enforcement, turn it over to them. Let's say they don't even catch the guy. I never get my truck back. I never see it ever again. Do an insurance claim, get paid out, go out and get myself a new truck. That's a whole lot better situation than getting beat up, getting stabbed, shooting the person, and now trying to explain in front of a jury of my peers why I wasn't defending property. No, I was defending my life and having my freedom and the rest of my life hinge on, do they believe me or do they not? I would have rather avoid conflict. I'd rather avoid having to use force of any level than to have the alternative. You got to sometimes really be thoughtful about what you're doing and really, is it worth it? All right. We see people all the time that do things and defend themselves, and they might be absolutely justified, morally, ethically, criminally, civilly, all justified, but they are crucified in the media. They have to go into hiding. They have to do this, they have to do that, and they have all that they have to deal with. Lawyers' fees out the yin-yang, which easily can get into hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Do I really want to share that same experience that they have? No. The absolute last thing I ever want to do is to ever use force of any level, let alone deadly force. You need to not only be able to adequately deal with conflict, but honestly, avoid it in the first place. You need to learn to avoid conflict. So simplify it as much as possible. We have 4 basic rules that need to be present but also remain present. Actual fear of death or serious bodily harm for yourself or others. You are the innocent party. You cannot be the initiator. You cannot be the aggressor. Lesser force would not suffice, and escape not being possible. If you ever use force or even threaten to use force, 911 needs to be contacted. Now, if you can do so, have somebody else make that phone call. If there is a bystander, there's a family member, if there's a friend nearby, and they were there for it, have them call. You don't want to be on the phone call yourself if you can avoid it, because that phone call, whether you realize it or not, that phone call is being recorded. And anything said during that phone call can be brought up in court. People that have just defended themselves are obviously and justifiably very worked up, sometimes angry, sometimes make statements that are not otherwise something that they would otherwise say. They could be inaccurate statements, and you want to make sure that you're not in a position where that type of statement is being made and recorded to be used against you later down the road. Now, dispatchers, it's their job to get as much information out of you as possible so they can give that to the responding law enforcement and EMS so that they are better prepared when they show up on the scene. But that's not your job. Your job was, first off, to defend yourself. Now your job is to make sure that the appropriate emergency services get there and that you now protect yourself from any type of criminal and civil prosecution. You're going to give them some very basic information, starting off with you were the victim of a violent crime, you defended yourself, where this is at, and that you need police and EMS to show up on the scene. Obviously, you need police to show up to be able to investigate and all that type of things that they do, but also EMS, not only for obviously the person that may be injured now, including but not limited to yourself. You may not realize at that exact moment that you yourself are injured. When EMS shows up, you need to make sure that you get checked out as well, because they may catch things that you didn't otherwise catch. There have been several times where people have been in such a situation and they may have been shot and or stabbed, and because of the adrenaline rushing through their body, they didn't realize it for a certain amount of time. You want to get checked out. Not only that, maybe you're not physically injured in that way, but maybe your blood pressure is going through the roof, maybe you're having a heart attack and you don't even know it. You must be seen. You need to ensure that you are seen by EMS when they show up. There may be nothing wrong with you, and they may be able to confirm that, but let them make the determination, not you. You, as soon as you reasonably can do so, whether right then and there or 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, as soon as you can reasonably do so, you need to call your attorney and get them rolling, because they have a job to do, and that starts immediately. And you need to make sure that you provide zero, not a little bit, I'm talking about 0 statements to law enforcement when they show up. You do not want to make any statements to law enforcement without consulting your attorney first. Yes, do expect, regardless if you make a statement or not, expect to be disarmed. Expect to be placed in handcuffs. Expect to be transported down to the police department or the sheriff's office and be questioned. That is going to happen. Do not think that anything you can say is going to change that. Also, not only should they know that you're safe, but you should reiterate something that you should have already told them, which is that you do not consent to any searches of yourself, of your home, of your business, of your vehicle. If law enforcement come to your house or your business and ask your family if they can search, if they come to your business and they ask your employees or coworkers or boss if they can search your business, you do not consent to any searches. If they have a warrant, so be it. Do not get in the way. Do not hinder their search with a warrant. If they have probable cause, don't hinder that. But if they are asking to search, it's because they, again, do not have probable cause or a warrant, and they need that consent. You should not be participating in any type of consensual searches at all. If they absolutely need to and a judge agrees, guess what? They'll get a warrant. And or if they don't need a warrant because they have probable cause, they'll figure that out and they'll do that search. But again, if they're asking, it's probably because they need consent, and you do not give consent to any searches. Again, I want to be clear, you're not going to hinder them in any type of lawful searches. You're not going to stop them, hide, or obliterate any type of evidence, but you're not going to help as well. Again, that is something that if consent is going to be needed and it should be given, that is a call that your attorney is going to make. that you are going to make with your attorney. Now, without providing any type of statements, you might want to direct law enforcement and say, hey, when this happened, my neighbor across the street, they were out smoking. Hey, my neighbor next door, they have security cameras. Hey, I think he or she dropped their knife over there. Things of that nature to make sure that it is not missed. But you're not going to be providing any statements about what you think, what you saw, what you felt at all. Also, law enforcement are going to ask you questions. They're going to want to start investigating, figuring out what happened, who done it, who didn't. They're going to ask you, hey, what happened? Do not answer that question. Just respectfully and firmly say, I appreciate your job. I understand what you got to do, but I have contacted my attorney. They're on their way, and I will not provide any statements until I have consulted my attorney and my attorney is present. Again, they're probably going to continue to press, whether that officer or maybe another one comes. They're going to press, hey, real quick, I know you're not going to answer questions, but I need to know this real quick. Do not provide any statements without first consulting your attorney. Now, that is not you being uncooperative or confrontational. That is you simply exercising your right to remain silent and to consult an attorney. Exercise that right. What is that right? What does that right mean? What value does it have if you don't exercise it? It is there for a reason. You have that protection provided by the Fifth Amendment for a reason. It is very important that you exercise that protection to remain silent and to not provide any statements without your attorney present. Now, this concludes our presentation of Maryland firearms laws. These laws are up to date as of October 1, 2023. These laws are subject to change in the future. Each year, Maryland has a legislative session where bills are heard, passed, and sometimes even signed into law. Ensure that you stay on top of any changes to Maryland law. Some of these laws may actually be found unconstitutional and go away. From time to time, as needed, we will provide updated videos here on our YouTube channel, PTPGun.com, Firearms Training, on any type of changes that may come down the pipe. If you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button to get update information on new laws coming to your area. There are plenty of other great videos on here that have lots of helpful information as well on our channel, and I encourage you to find those, watch those, and if you have any questions on this video or any others, put them in the comments below. We want to hear from you about maybe what we weren't the most clear about. If you have any questions, I would love to answer those in the comments below. And if you remember nothing else from this presentation, I hope that you remember to shut up and lawyer up.